I just put this together. It's going to be a pretty quick lunch and learn. I wanted to give a little bit more direction. I know with all of our locations and with as many people as we've been bringing on board recently, I want to make sure that we go through this information. It is important. I've seen some things the past, I don't know, a few weeks where it's just been inconsistent. So putting this out there and just getting the information to everybody will just benefit us all. So you know what's out there, what's available, and how we can work together as a team to accomplish what needs to be done for these pre-construction meetings. See if I can get these slides to advance. Try that again. There we go. So topic again is how to run a successful pre-construction meeting. Thing out of the way. So it starts off first with the contract, right? We bid a job, we get a contract, and we see this a lot where it comes up where we have to start a job, we get the fire drill, right? The customer will call us and we've got a special project that we're still working on all the admin side of the paperwork, but we have to start the job tomorrow. What do you do? Well, we need to have some type of source document or some communication to our administrative office here in Dallas. So there needs to be something, some type of communication, whether it's an email or a source document from the customer that needs to go to Andy, to somebody, maybe it's Mindy, copy myself on it, so we can get these projects properly set up. Because the end user, when we do these pre-construction meetings and we start that job the next day, if we don't have that in the system, that Mandy fills out a work report, and he turns in that footage in the next week, and if that job's not set up or properly set up, then we run into issues with payroll and reporting in the backlog report. There's a lot of things that tie into that, so I think we all understand that. But at the branch level and here at GDA, just if we do get the fire drills, just keep that in the back of your mind, that just communicate with our headquarters here and with the people in the administrative department. It'll save a lot of headaches in the future. The notice to proceed, I just talked about. You can email the project setup too. Sometimes people will put it in the package. Simply just throw something in a package from Houston to come to Dallas in the mail. Well, you can send that project setup via email. It's quick, it's easy, and Andy has what he needs to coordinate that with the department. The project handoff to operations. So once we get the contract in hand, once we get everything set up into Computer-Ease, we have the project folder, which is put together, I know here in Dallas, is put together by the operations department. All the information that is given on the product submittals is on a shared drive somewhere here in Dallas where we can print all that information. And ultimately our goal here is to properly hand it off to our foreman, because to have a successful pre-con is they need to have the documents available and ahead of time so that we can go on site and go through all of the paperwork and make sure they have what they need. So if you're not doing it at your location, please do. Just put together a two-sided folder with the information that we're going to cover here. Inside that folder, you need to have the specifications pertinent to the scopes of work you're going to be performing. The details relative to the scopes of work need to also be in there. The plans, layouts, if you're using OST as a project manager, it's pretty simple. You can highlight on the plan. You can print the plan of where we need to be installing the materials. I know that fire stopping is one that we do a lot of, and we don't have layouts. So make sure that we do have those OST files or layouts that are highlighted. If you don't want to use OST, if you have a plan that you can highlight for the pre-con, simply highlighting the areas that we're going to be talking about, but we need to start that work for that fire drill, then that's what the foremen are going to need. Work orders and work reports. Verifying it too to make sure that the project address matches so that when we actually get to the pre-construction meeting that everybody knows where we're going, which we'll talk about again, effective communication side of it. But those work orders and work reports need to be there. Maybe a couple extra copies of the work reports would be helpful too if we've got a work to. The product data or the installation instructions goes hand in hand with the MSDS. Again, the product data and MSDS also need to be in these folders for the guys, specifically for the one that we're starting the next day. So if we've got below grade waterproofing that starts tomorrow, then you should have the product data and you should have the MSDS for that scope of work that we're going to be starting. I certainly understand that we've got these $500,000 projects or bigger, $2 million projects. that you have a lot of information and a lot of packets. But, if we cover that first scope for that pre-con to get your job started and make sure that everything in pieces and parts are there and everything's been verified, we can always do a separate pre-construction meeting for that air barrier scope in a couple of months from now. So at least getting everything ready for what we're going to be starting that next day is something that needs to happen. Folder review. Well, the general manager or the operations manager here in Dallas will review that folder. All right, just do a quick scope overview. Look at all the different materials that we're going to be using, the equipment that might be associated with that. Because when we go to that pre-construction meeting, it might not be for another week, or we might get that contract back, and it might be another month before we have to have a pre-con. So there are some lead times with materials, right? If we have a 2 to 4 week lead time on some of these materials or greater, it's going to fall in the operations department to make sure that we're prepared so that come game time for the installation, we have what we need. So just make sure that general managers, that you're scanning those as they come through and just flagging anything potentially that could screw us over from a lead time standpoint. Project startup and the preparation prior to going out to a job site. The scope of work is ready to start. We've identified that. We need to schedule a pre-con that's on site. All right. A lot of times we try to get away with doing a tabletop pre-con in an office. I can tell you it doesn't work. All right. If you've got a parking lot that you have to caulk and that's the only scope of work that you have, all right, well maybe you need to bring that up with your team and discuss it. But don't just assume that we have a pre-construction meeting and we're going to do it in the office, because there are a lot of considerations outside of paperwork. You've got safety considerations, you've got installation issues that you run into that's not shown on the details or not shown in the plans that always comes up. So we need to make sure that these pre-cons are held on site. And if you cannot hold it on site, then please notify someone so that we can make sure that, again, this is all about the foreman. Project managers bid a job. The work goes to the operations department, and then you guys are the ones in the field that install it. So we want to make sure that we're communicating all the information to you. So who attends a pre-con? Well, it's all up there for you, right? The estimator, project manager, and the foreman. Those are the key two components, right? If you don't have either one of those, then you do not have a successful pre-con, all right? Because they're the one that bid the job. You as a foreman, man, you know nothing about that job until the project manager tells you on the paper what he's trying to communicate to you. So those two people absolutely need to be there. If you have a project coordinator, he should be there as well. If you do not have a project coordinator, a senior foreman should be there. He should be available to attend that. Safety and QC department, I know we have Guy Nakima. He's our safety coordinator down in Houston, right? He's in the Houston office. He helps manage our Austin and Houston offices. Sometimes he might come up here. You might see him up here every once in a while. That might change, just when we need the coverage and we have multiple jobs. But primarily he's in the Houston and Austin area hitting those job sites. So he is available for those pre-cons. Now you have Jordan and you have Max here in Dallas and Oklahoma. All right. When you get out to New Mexico and West Texas, it's a little bit more difficult. But if we get a little bit of notification from Bryant that they've got a big job starting, or, I'm overseeing that as looking at all the operations, I know that I can send one of those guys out to that pre-con. So safety QC department should try to make as many as we can. For representation, right? Any one of the guys, whether it's a project manager, whether it's a foreman, whether it's a senior foreman, can cover for safety or quality on a pre-con. All right? We're going to show you what needs to be filled out at a pre-con, but anybody and everybody's role, when you look at your job description, says that part of what you do needs to be safety oversight, safety management. So if we need the help, then somebody needs to cover and fill out a JHA on these pre-cons. And then lead men and crew, if it applies. You might have a specialty scope of work that you want to get a lead man that's going to be out there, or a project foreman. We see project foremen more and more now that they might have to be at this pre-con to understand the full scope, so that the estimator, everybody's on the same page. Okay, so it's always a good idea to take them into consideration too. So effective communication. Again, verify the job site address. I know Steve Frank is no longer here, but back when I was a project coordinator, we went to a couple of job sites where the address didn't match, and we're in the boondocks looking for a pre-con, and Steve's at the right address, but the work order says one thing and it's not. So again, before we go to the actual job site, just verify and make sure that we're all going to the same place. discuss the meeting details prior to departure. Again, we had something just recently here in Dallas where we all went, the foreman didn't show up for a pre-con and the other person did. Where the project manager was going to the pre-con and it was earlier in the day. Right? Just again, it's that communication, make sure that we're all on the same page. If you need to email, you know, we need to make sure that we're all have the correct times, the correct dates, and we're going to the correct job site. Notify the general contractor and schedule for the same day if you have any GC required pre-con or pre-job startup meetings. A lot of our customers might have a pre-installation meeting that they want us to go to prior to installation. So if we can coordinate that for the same day, project coordinators, awesome. That's killing two birds with one stone. We'll see here in some later slides, that should be done second. We should do our internal pre-con first so we can get a feel for the job site. And then confirm everything. Again, just making sure that we're all on the same page. Document review. So there was a document that Nathan put together in Oklahoma. This was back, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, and that's what you see on the right here. Project managers, you might have seen this. If you haven't, you should print a couple, or we can print some or email them to you. At the branches, I don't know if you've seen it in Houston or Bryant. It's a real good document for the PM estimator to make sure that they have all the submittals, all the information prior to going to the job site. You know, if there's something that's missing, then he can at least identify that and bring that up, and that'll be a follow-up item that we'll have to follow up with after the pre-con. But make sure that we have 90 to 95% of all this, if not 100. I know sometimes some submittals on work that we're going to do later hasn't been approved yet, right? But what's going to be installed tomorrow needs to be approved, right? So make sure we have that documentation in that folder. And this is just a prep tool to help everybody. And then the project folder. If our foremen haven't got the project folder yet, make sure it's coming to the pre-con. Make sure your project foreman or your senior foreman or you have that folder at that pre-con, because that's your Bible. That's going to tell you everything, and that's your instructions on what you need for the job site. If you don't have it, then you can kick somebody in the nuts. Then you actually get to the project, and you have your pre-con, right? So what do we look at the pre-con? Scope review. Right? We have to start some type of work, either that same day, that next day, or within the next month or two. There's paper forms always available. If somebody does not feel comfortable using Canvas, right, there's always paper forms available. So these are some of the forms that we have. We've got that pre-con foreman checklist, all right, which looks very similar to the one that we just did for the kickoff meeting for the project manager. I'm going to show that in the next slide, what that looks like. You can fill that out. That's a really good tool on the job site to make sure that you cover all the items. If you have amnesia one day and you wake up and you forget what to do at a pre-con, that's why we have a checklist. Project pre-con review form. All right, that's another form. I don't know why we have two forms, but we do. It identifies crew and people involved in it. I'll show it again after this slide, but what I'm trying to say is all this we've incorporated into one form on Canvas. So if you like Canvas, it's a lot easier for us to use. It's a lot easier for us to file these and to find them later. Use Canvas, because you only have to fill out one form, and it's all in one place, and it's easy to use. A job hazard analysis has to be filled out on every project when we do a pre-con. At the startup, when we start a new scope of work, we need to fill out a job hazard analysis. That's going to be done by your safety representative. Okay? If you don't have a safety guy that's going to fill that out, then a foreman can fill that out. If you don't feel comfortable filling it out, the project manager can fill it out. But it's going to start with your safety department. It's going to go to your operations, and the last resort would be having a project manager fill that out. Okay? Who fills these forms out? I didn't cover that up here. So on paper forms, you've got a project coordinator, a foreman, a senior foreman, or a safety QC. All right? I don't expect Niles to fill out a foreman checklist. All right? You already did your due diligence. You have everything ready for that pre-con. You're going to go over all the items. All right? It's the operations department that needs to fill out these forms, or a safety QC. Okay, so I certainly don't expect the project managers to fill those out. Same thing with the meeting checklist. It's the same people who fill it out on the Canvas report. Again, 3-4 years ago, these forms have been there. All right, they do exist. If you haven't seen them or you need more copies, let somebody know. We'll get you plenty of copies if you want to use paper. The one on the left is the Foreman checklist. Have all the specs, plans, layouts, details, work orders, work reports. Have they been reviewed? Yes or no? Circle it. All right. Are there any notes? Are we missing something? Have the product data and MSDS been accounted for? I'm not going to go through every one of these, but it's a real good tool to answer all the questions that we always forget. And at the bottom, you can put down your follow-up items. One on the right is a form that we've had for many years, probably 8 to 10 years. And this identifies more scopes of work and personnel that's going to be running it and who's trained, right? Who's trained on those scopes of work. So really, these two forms should go hand in hand. But if you fill out the Canvas report, it's only one form. All this information is in there. So try to use the electronic. If not, we'll have to fill both of these out. Job hazard analysis, exactly why we go to a job site when you see a condition like that, right? We expect our guys to go there and do below-grade waterproofing that next day. And if we do a tabletop pre-con, that's what you miss. It's either you got a foreman that will try to get in an area that he feels is safe, or he'll report it to you and say, I'm not going in there. Let's just not even put him in that situation. Let's just make sure that we go to the job site, we survey those issues, and we fill out a job hazard analysis, because maybe we can start on a different section of that job site. Maybe it doesn't have to be in that FW location. Okay, so there it is. There's your Canvas. That's your electronic. I think I've seen a lot of them come through. We had about 7 or 8 of them last week, company-wide. You can dive into the general information, identify who's going to be there, what lead men, what crew members need to be there. Then you have your checklist. I'm going to go through some of these. Verify all specifications. Right? There's some projects that require end dams, or some projects that require special terminations. Read the spec for the scope of work that you're going to be performing that next day at a very minimum. I know that there's air barriers that we start in 2 months from now, but if you're doing below-grade waterproofing, read the spec, or somebody from that pre-con needs to read the specification for that scope that you're going to install. Right? Because otherwise we're going to miss something. We're going to miss something important. Don't just check off the box and say, okay, we've got it. Let's actually get into it and take the time and spend 5 minutes and read it. Review all plans, layouts, and details. Okay? Again, I get it. We've got an air barrier job coming up in 2 months on that same project. If you want to go through the below-grade waterproofing details, just make sure the other details are there for you. All right? Go through your work order. If you've got air barrier, you should have details. You should have layouts. You should have the specs all in your Foreman folder for everything. If you don't, that's when you raise your hand or you write it down at the end of this form. Those are called follow-up items, right? That's what we need to get you so that when you get to that scope of work, you have what you need. But you certainly should have everything for what you're starting. Verify the copies of product data and SDS. I went on a pre-con last month, and we didn't have the product data a couple months ago. And we were trying to pull up on our phones. We went to Google, and we were trying to pull up the installation details because we didn't know the overlap of the waterproofing. We didn't know if it was 3 inches. We didn't know if it was 4 or 5. Shit, I couldn't remember. So having it in the folder for the foreman or having it in the estimators folder and available would have saved us some headache trying to find set codes of detail on how do you overlap this, because you're going to forget, and they're all different. We certainly don't want to install it and dig it up and pay all that money. So let's verify, make sure that we do have the product data at SDS. It may seem, like something that's not important, but it is. Review the work order and work report. All right, that was one thing that came up in our operations meeting on Friday. The foreman, if you notice that there's something on a line item that you can't make money on, or historically you can't make money on that item, now's the time to bring it up. Right? We do have operations meetings every week, which is great, and that's a good time to bring it up too. But some of these things we can catch at a pre-construction meeting, and who knows, that might save us and give us more production on the job site. Daily reports. So almost every job site requires a daily report, and a lot of them are now requiring a daily JHA. So make sure that we ask that question at the pre-con. All right, you can do your internal pre-con and you can fill this out after you meet with a customer, but don't leave it blank. All right, if if we go back and we find out that somebody filled out a pre-construction checklist and it's not checked off, and every Tuesday you have a job site meeting where you've got daily reports that are required, just make sure that it matches what's actually on the job site. When people go through these checklists and they don't even read it, they just start check. All right, make sure you understand. If you don't, then ask somebody, because if there's something that's not right in these or something we need to add, it's very simple for you to add something to this checklist. Special equipment, special tools, on-site material storage required. Those are all things we get into. This is one that was done in Oklahoma last week. Then you get the scope of work. So it actually serves as a quality control report too, right? It communicates information about the area that's going to be ready. So you can identify the scope of work and when it's ready. And you can identify any deficiencies. Okay, so that's what that looks like on Canvas, if you've never seen it from the actual generator report side. So part of this continued is during the project pre-con, check in with the general contractor. All right. Once we're done, make sure that we speak with the customer. Don't just leave the job site. That's not helping us, especially if we're going out of town for a pre-con. Right? We need to have that conversation because they might mention something to us, or we might think we know where something's at that we need to start that next week, and they might have a completely different idea. They might want you working on the north elevation and not the west. So speak with the general contractor. If the pre-installation meeting is required, schedule that for after you do your internal pre-con, because now you guys went through the details, you understand the scope of work, you got a good feel for the job site, and now you can be effective when you have that pre-installation meeting with your customer, because you physically walk the job site and know what's going on. That's if possible, right? If they have it at 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe you have to meet with the GC first. But always check in with the GC so that we can get any follow-up items resolved, any questions that we have, and ask these checklist questions. This is what we just went through. Make sure you ask them who do you turn the daily reports into? Where's the job hazard analysis? Do you have to use your form, or do you have to use the general contractor's form? Right? Who does that go to? Special badging requirements. Right? For is it a school? Do we need to have a Fort Worth ISD badge, Dallas ISD badge? Right? If you do, then check the box and write down what it is. Again, this is a communication tool so that we can prepare ourselves and get ready for that job startup. Are there weekly subcontractor meetings? This comes up a lot. If there is, specify the date and the time. Don't just check the box. Right? It says when. So I'll see somebody check a box on the pre-con checklist. Yes, I have a weekly subcontractor meeting. And then it says when, and it's blank. So just type it in there. Tuesday, 9 o'clock. Done. We got the information received. Right? We can put that in our schedule, and we know that somebody can attend that meeting. Safety orientation required. Again, a yes or no. Check the box. When? Is it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday? Is it just Friday? What time? All right? That's going to help our operations department. Because we're going to be doing multiple pre-cons and multiple job startups, and having that and going back and referencing this checklist and this sheet is going to be a good tool for us to know anything and everything that we have at the beginning of that project. Material storage location. Is it on-site? Is it off-site? Well, we know if we have a material storage unit that's off-site, people will steal your shit, because that just happened in Dallas. So,
does that mean, is there a place on there for us to mark the security on site line?
Yeah. There's notes after all of these sections. So you can check off material storage. If you have material that you need to store in that project, then you check the box and you put material is being stored off-site, maybe discuss other options. If your material storage unit is 2 miles away from the project, then there's no security, then obviously that's an issue. But again, it's on there. It's a good thing because it did just come up. Safety or QC plan submittals. I put only if asked by the customer. Sometimes we get in these meetings and one of our guys will say, hey, do you guys need a safety binder? It's like, well, I don't think so, but yeah, why don't you give us one? All right, it takes a lot of time. We can get it to them. It's no problem, but certain customers will ask you at a pre-con that they want a hard copy binder in their trailer of our safety and quality plans. Right? We're happy to give it to them, but just don't offer that to them. As soon as you say that to a customer, they're going to say yes. All right? It's not that I don't want to give it to them, but we can submit it electronically, and most of the time we do. But there are certain customers that want the binder, and if you offer them a binder, then Jordan and Max and Guy have to work extra hard to get them a binder, a hard copy binder for their trailer that's going to get thrown in the garbage after that job site anyways. Just a little note on that. Follow-up items, this is one of the last slides. Make sure that you document all of your outstanding items. All right, a lot of times, again, at the end of that checklist, it's blank. So you went to a pre-con and you have no outstanding items, none. Everything's perfect. All of your submittals have been approved. All of your details are in your folder. All right, just ask the question. You can flip through each scope of work and, oh, check, I've got a product data sheet for bentonite, check. Okay, you go through each one of your scopes of work. If you don't have something, that's a follow-up item. Write it down because it's very simple. These PMs will get you what you need. All right, and we know that it's not perfect, and that's why we're doing this. All right, not every project is going to be a perfect pre-con, and I fully understand that. It's just a tool for us to try to get better and for all of us to document what we need. Follow-up responsibilities. So the estimator and project manager will be following up with any pending submittals that haven't been approved yet. Missing or clarification on details from after that pre-construction meeting. Maybe there's something that came up that doesn't match what was drawn or on the plans. The safety and QC department, if there are safety and QC submittals they need from us, like training certifications, all right, let them handle that. They do that a lot for us, so they'll get everything that they need for your boom lift and powder actuated gun certifications. Estimator, PM, project coordinator, and foreman. Again, additional scope startups and meetings as needed. So it's to get you to start that job so everybody has what they need, and then later when you've got that 500,000 square foot air barrier that you've got installed, it's a great time to go back out to the project and review everything for that scope. Because I guarantee you, 3 months prior to that, you won't remember everything. Okay? And we need to go over that. So that's just to get into the new project for a pre-con, and then you have a scope startup when you have additional scopes that the foreman will need more clarification on, because you guys are definitely going to need it. Okay, so ask for it. In your operations meeting each week, make sure that the guys are bringing pre-cons to your table. Right? What new job startups do we need to do for next week? What new job startups do we need to do for the next 2 weeks? All right, so bring that up in all of your operations meetings for the foreman when you come to the table, and that's going to help everybody plan a little bit better. The fire drills, it is what it is. We all get put into it. But just planning a little bit better and communicating better amongst our team and understanding the roles of who's supposed to be filling what out, it's a team effort. Is basically what it comes down to. And again, I don't expect everything to be perfect, but it should be at least a guide of what documents are needed and what a pre-con looks like when you go to the job site.